Okay, so with this, now it's time to welcome our next speaker. He is Mr. Michael, and he is Managing Director in Data Interactive. So, Michael is the CEO of Data Interactive, a boutique business advisory firm, and his career spans over 20 years servicing large corporates in various consulting roles across audit, tax, and business management, and more recently, business process automation. Today, he will speak on the topic working smarter, digitalization in finance. So, over to you, Michael.
Right, thank you. You can hear me at all?
Yes, I can hear you. Before you start, definitely we'd like to know that how your health is now.
Thank you. For those on the call, I was unlucky to get COVID on the weekend after 2 years of
Yeah.
avoiding it. But thank you, Atul. I'm nearly fighting
Now
fit
you're
now.
now you're fine, fit and
Yeah,
fine.
I am. I'm here, nearly fully conscious, and about 90%. So besides the voice being
Yeah,
a little raspy, I'll do my best to deliver you some useful content today.
yeah,
And thanks for having me.
sure.
Um, okay, so let's start the slide share here. Um, Move this over here. Um, okay, I think you can see the PowerPoint front screen there.
Yes, I
Yeah,
can see
great.
the slides. Yeah,
Great. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming to this session, and I'll do my best to give you our take, our data interactive take on the digitalisation of finance, and in particular, some of the things that we're doing with clients, and the tips that come out of those things. I'm trying to share with you today, as well as if we move fairly quickly through the talk, I'll be able to show you a couple of examples or talk to a couple of examples to give some granularity to what we can talk about. These topics about automation can be very blue sky thinking sometimes. Sometimes they are for people who haven't seen tools or haven't seen the results in action. It can all be a little bit mysterious. So I'll do my best to give you some granular examples at the end of this session to help you appreciate what's possible. Oops, wrong button. Okay, next slide. Here we go. A very quick overview of who we are, just so you know who you're talking or hearing from. Um, we have specialized over the last 6 years at being very good in the business process automation space. So we're a boutique firm servicing Australian businesses based in Brisbane. And we go across the three different areas of automation that you see here, from advisory, giving strategic advice, automation readiness reviews, discovery workshops, and all the advisory things you can think of where you might need a sounding board to talk to or someone with experience who's done it before to talk to. We do consulting advice and workshops. But then also, besides recommending how to go about automation and what toolkit to use, we also do implementation work, either in a do-it-yourself sense where we sell the tool to the client, we train them and set them up on the first one or two processes, and then help them do it themselves because they've got the right bandwidth and capability, or as an automation as a service, similar, same toolkit. The tools are either bought by the client or bought through us where they're using our tools, and we're providing a service. Or we have now got, in the last 18 months, digital worker for hire, which is where we've pre-built a number of solutions, and they only need a little bit of configuration to be deployed. So we have bots for hire, if you like, both in an RPA bot sense or in a workflow automation sense, pre-built workflows for very common business processes that can be hired. So what we're trying to do in this space here is help people get started with automation, get the benefits of automation, as opposed to having to get large investment, large business cases set up in before they can taste the benefits of automation. We believe as a company, if we can help people have a longer runway to start their journey, especially in somewhere like finance where all the dollars and cents are really watched and return on investment is needed. If you can make that return on investment calculation as simple as possible, because they don't have to buy the software, they don't have to go and spend the money to build and go through test and learn, potentially because a digital worker pre-built solution is meeting their needs, then you have just lowered the barriers of entry and allowed that business to taste automation and get their own momentum, which will then see them potentially grow enough capability internally to get to a do-it-yourself stage. And then everybody wins in our view, because they get more efficient. There's just a pipeline of work that occurs, and then we are able to get on and help them, or train more of their people to do the work. The other thing that has been an emerging service for us is Automation Coach, where people in middle management generally, again, if I talk to finance throughout this topic, in the finance space, people want to digitize. They want to have the finance function of the future, but they don't know where to start. And they maybe don't have enough budget to get a big consulting project approved. So they just need a sounding board of who to talk to, what are the different tools out there, how can we start, what type of people, skill sets do we need? And that's some of the work we do in the Automation Coach under that product, if you like. The other distinguishing factor about Data Interactive, just quickly, is that we are vendor agnostic. So there's 12 different platforms. I'll touch on a couple of them as we go through. There's 12 platforms that we're licensed to resell and implement, and we've got about 24 different tools in our toolkit. Some of those platforms have multiple different purposes or things that they can do. And last but not least, in our view, it's not about the shiny toy. It is absolutely about, does a tangible outcome that solves a business problem result from automation? An implementation of a bot or a tool, just because it's working doesn't mean it's delivering the value, or doesn't mean that the support and maintenance cost is going to overcome the value that was perceived at the start. So it's very important to have a tangible focus, and measuring success in automation is what we encourage our clients to do, and what we try to hold ourselves accountable for as we deliver services. Some of our clients are on the screen here. Again, this is simply to not to really impress you, but just to let you know you're talking to people that have dealt with the top end of town. In Horizon, top left there is top 30 company in Australia, Brisbane City Council, the largest local government in the country. So we have some credible experience, I guess, that I'm hoping to share with you here today. What I find sometimes, excuse me, I used to do is talk about the results of all these tips and tricks we're going to talk about at the end of the session. But people have been sort of interested to see what can you achieve through automation. So I brought that to the start of the session today, just to give you a quick taste of a few things, and hopefully they will resonate with you. The first, each of the 6 things that will come up on the slide here are different examples to what I believe you would have seen with any other provider or just in the market, because I wanted to dispel a myth here that automation, robotics, and RPA are only can only really benefit high volume processes that are simple and rules based. In our view, with you using the right toolkit, you can absolutely solve, and we do it all every day, more complex finance related processes, which might be complex spreadsheet calculations, complex business rules, or in this case tax rules, application to data, of those application of the rules to the data. So this was a complex tax compliance reporting piece of work, involved some workflow as well. So the 2 things, data wrangling in a complex sense as well as workflow. Used to take 2 weeks, now takes 1 hour. That project took 15 days to deliver. Probably about 5 days of business requirements understanding and gathering, and then the 15 days to deliver. And the 15 days included the user acceptance testing at the end as well. The benefits unlocked there was time, accuracy, and key person risk was mitigated. I'll bring up these slides quickly because I'm conscious of time, since we started a little bit behind. But here's another one, monthly reporting, very common in the finance space. Which involved different jurisdictions, but data validation, reconciliation, workflow are the types of tasks that need to be solved. That went from 1.5 days to 2 minutes. Procurement card data analysis. So this is taking expense data, and 6 different data sets was a thing here where they had to be merged and wrangled together. Some people might use something like a business intelligence tool to analyze this data, but before you can analyze, you need to validate the data, cleanse the data, find exceptions and investigate them, and then once you've got your clean data, then analyze. Otherwise we get actionable insights in dashboards that are actually false data. So this project was around that topic, bringing the data sets together, wrangling it, reporting to the executive leadership teams at the top of the company, This is a $1 billion health fund. 4 business units. So executive leadership team then had 4 business units underneath them. Then under the business units, there was 29, I think it was. Yes, 29 general manager areas. So before the automation, it took 1.5 days to just do the top 2 sort of reports. The data sliced by executive leadership team and then sliced by the 4 business units. They didn't have time in the business. They didn't have time to do the more granular reporting, even though this is where the action was. This is where the errors existed and the action had to be put on the general manager to talk to his team to fix the problems. But they didn't have time to do that level of reporting. However, through automation, the whole process became a lot quicker, as well as the fact that they could deliver more value, this internal accounting area. And very surprisingly, in a way, when you look at the value that was created, but the project took us only about 8 days or so to deliver. So it was a great result. Something a little different was OCR, data extraction from letters. So think about accounts payable automation, or in this case, it was a federal government area that received, it was a business that received federal government letters. So they were in a standard format, but they had to take all these letters for 25,000 customers and enter the data into their system about how much money they could, the government would subsidise in terms of what they call their home care assistance packages. And so that involved data extraction, validation, and entry into the system. We did use robots in this case, as well as some other tools to do the data validation. But it was an amazing return on investment, because after the automation, no employee time was needed. Before, it was 30 days for 2 staff each quarter. After automation, there was no employee time, because one of the main reasons there was the OCR, the data extraction. Because it was a common government letter, we didn't have the issue about a validation queue when the OCR couldn't read the letter. That was one of the good things about this automation. It was a cleaner example where you don't need a human to monitor the validation queue. But nevertheless, it was a decent project, but a huge win as well. And I'll just bring these last couple of things up here. The message I wanted to give you at the outset is so many things are possible. Sometimes often we find that more is possible than the client realizes. And I'll tell you how we're achieving some of those benefits in a moment. But the message I want to give the audience here today is have an open mind, realize that automation, not just robotics, RPA, but automation as a concept, which includes RPA, as I'll tell you in a moment, there's so much as possible. So know where you want to start is maybe the biggest, most important thing to do first. Okay, let's get into this. I'll move quickly here, but remember, these projects are about delivering value and productivity to the business. Again, I'll focus on the finance function. But in the finance function context, there's so many people who are used to doing things the way they've always done it. Used to just downloading data into a spreadsheet, doing the month-end accounting process and creating the spreadsheets and the reports and saying, that's my job done. So they're often too busy to think differently. Others in the business know that they need to think differently, but they're just a little bit afraid. They don't know, where does this round thing go? Does it go in the box or on the side here? And so they're not doing the work. They may be the managers, but the managers, just from a mindset point of view, haven't had the mindset shift yet. And a lot of the work we do, including with Brisbane City Council, one of our largest clients that we're doing a large project at the moment, is around automation mindset, helping the finance function think differently, realize what's possible, because that's where we unlock value. We unlock value by helping the people who know the business processes realize what's possible. They don't have to build it, in my view, and I'll talk to that in a moment, but they can do this initial pipeline of, hey, can we put this on the list of things that we want to look at and to analyze how can we go about automation. And then you have other people who have ideas, but they maybe don't know how to communicate those ideas in a business context. So putting that into another little graphic that might help you. Sometimes people are stuck in Excel processes in finance. Others might be stuck in email, so expense payment approval processes. If they're by emails to the different managers who have the authority to approve an expense payment, we're stuck in email. We can get out of email into a workflow automation tool in that example. And other times we just got too much technology and we don't know how to use it, or it doesn't talk to each other. So there's lots of different places where people are coming from. And despite that, automation, in our view, is an answer to many of these things. Let me explain how we look to enable automation for clients. One of the first things that we found that sort of makes us a little different is because we're vendor agnostic, we take a slightly different approach. We say, well, look, first we need to understand what you're trying to solve. Do you have a clear strategy? What's your why? You know, do you need to see some examples of automation to open your mind to what's possible? Is it one tool or multiple tools? So often we hear vendors of automation tools are saying our tool is the tool you need. It can do everything. The honest truth, like Sean said, full credit to you, Sean. I agree with a number of things you're saying in your presentation. If you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. A toolkit approach to automation is what we strongly advocate for, and the reason we became licensed in now 12 different platforms. And there's a range of questions here, including the people question. What skills and capabilities do our team need? Our philosophy at Data Interactive is to have a glass box, not a black box approach to automation. What that means is black box would mean we do it for you, or developers do it for you, and they're the ones you need to go back to fix the automation if it's not working. What that doesn't do is allow the teams in the business to learn how to do some of this stuff themselves. Maybe not all the fancy stuff, but how to define a problem, how to process map a problem, how to change a mapping file that might change the way the Excel automation might work. They don't have to change the bolts of the nuts and bolts of the automation, but they might need to influence and configure the automation. So how do we bring them on the journey so that they can do some of their own support and maintenance and not rely on external providers all the time? So that's one thing about getting people to realize there's many ways, many questions to need to ask yourself. The other main question, excuse me, is this: what is the problem we're trying to solve? It is a critical question. It's so simple. I know you probably hear people say it all the time. You might say it all the time. But if we don't ask it properly and then understand our answer, we are somewhat setting ourselves up for the risk of a failure, not necessary failure, but the risk of failure, because we won't know when we finish the automation, did we achieve the outcomes? Some might say, oh, I still need to do a couple of steps. It's not fully automated. But the process wasn't about maybe fully automation. It might be getting some time back. So out of 13 steps in a process, if you can automate steps 3, 4, and 5 and get 10 hours back, even though steps 5, 6, and 7 need a human to come in and do a couple of things, that might be a use case that is worthy of attention if management see the value of the time saved, or it's a key person risk they're trying to avoid. The other thing we say once we understand the problem we want to solve is and people find this a very insightful comment I've heard, that commit in your business case for what you're going to solve, commit how you're going to use the time you're going to solve. Don't let just the time say, we're going to save 3 hours or 10 hours through doing this automation. Go on to say, and my team of 2 people who no longer need to spend the 10 hours, they are going to be asked to do this new project or this new extra investigation. Commit to how you're going to use the time, because the automation tools work. If they're implemented correctly, the automation tools will always deliver. But how the people are managed to realize the productivity gain is the key that we find business users or business owners and managers want to hear about. I'll keep moving. The other way we achieve some of the results I showed you before is because of our toolkit mindset. We proudly talk about this toolkit to every client, to every new prospect, and I'd encourage you, even internally, even if you're not using firms like ourselves, have an open mindset to tools rather than a closed mindset. The reason being is we strongly encourage process mapping or process mining tools are used to understand the problem you're trying to solve, and I'll show you a quick process map to show you so you know what I mean in a few slides' time. Once we understand the problem, we then have a number of ways to solve that problem. Is it a data capture and digitization problem? If it is, we can use online forms or OCR, where we read a PDF and turn it into, say, a CSV file of data. But then we need to do something with that data. We might need to push the data into a system using RPA. We might need to workflow the form, an expense payment form, where it has to go to someone, a manager, for approval. And then a document needs to be generated, like an approved purchase order. It's document generation. Excuse me. So we need to think about the problem, the activities, and the tasks within the problem, and then reflect on what's the toolkit we need, and what's the skill set we need, and you get the skill set clear through process mapping the problem. Data transformation or data wrangling is a big component of what we do in our business, and we've got a few different tools in that space. Overall, we talk about a toolkit approach because we believe that if you just had RPA, and when we started the business 6 years ago, we had RPA and one other tool, and we've grown it now to 12 different platforms because we needed the tools to work for the clients. We could have made a lot more money if we stick with RPA, but we would not have been setting up the clients for success because RPA alone can be a very brittle way of automating and require high level maintenance. However, if you combine RPA with a business process management platform or an online data capturing platform, and then do some data wrangling in data wrangling tools, not using RPA to open Excel and do all these manipulations to spreadsheets, you get a much more reliable and robust automation, particularly for finance functions, given their high level of use in data and Excel in that example. I'll move on. The other thing, once you know that, okay, there's many tools out there and there's a toolkit that we're recommending, you go, well, how do I choose a tool? And I'll just show you this quick analogy of RPA on one side and a cloud automation platform on the other side. Now, some RPA vendors, some of the ones that we use and resell, have now become cloud as well. But I wanted to draw a distinction. Don't worry about the different tools. Call it tool 1 and tool 2. But in essence, here's one thing: RPA developer skills required, or say specialist, tool 1 developer skills required, compared to low code drag and drop, and let's say in one of the tools we use for finance, an Excel-like skill set is required more than a developer logic type of skill set. What that means is you have different license fees and implementation costs, obviously, for the different tools, and this is actually fairly accurate for one of the RPA products in the market. I won't name them, as compared to one of the other tools that we use. But the ongoing cost is what I want you to focus on here. The lower that can be, the higher the return on investment, obviously. It also means one of the reasons this ongoing cost is lower is because the skill set required, I didn't have that pop up here, sorry, but the skill set required here for this particular tool is able to be learnt a lot quicker than and grow into a lot easier than it is from some of the more technical tools. When I hear that RPA can be used as a low-code, no-code tool, as well as it can be used for coding, the truth is, in many of the things that we see, and sometimes even what we need to touch, you use script and coding within RPA to get around some things that the drag and drop doesn't do. But instantly that means that an RPA build, if you do too much of that, becomes the old macro on a spreadsheet problem that only the person that built it understands it, especially if they haven't done good documentation. So we strongly favor, in our toolkit, we strongly favor tools that have a higher ROI because the learning curve for the tool is lower. And that means internal staff, if they have the bandwidth and know the right skills, can learn the tool and embrace the tool quicker than us having to teach them for 6, 12 months and provide ongoing support services. So I would encourage you to think about automation toolkit and then which tools, what are their profiles on these sort of matters of license implementation, ongoing costs. The last thing that we do a little differently that allowed some of the results I first showed to be unlocked, and again, I'll touch on this in 2 slides, I think it is now, is this is the way we've gone to market these days. And again, I would encourage you, if you're businesses, to seek this sort of thing from your providers if they're not doing it. But basically, I'll bring this up here, is customer readiness should drive the conversation. So if you've got the team and you're ready to do it all yourself and you just need to know what tool, great. Talk to people about the different tools, make your assessment, and get on with it. However, we found clients trying to do that, some of our big clients doing that many years ago, and 6, 9 months later, they had achieved very little because the internal people did not have the bandwidth. They had realized what was really required to do things properly. So automation service then grew for us, and now, as I mentioned earlier, the digital worker for hire approach, where you can get immediate results, show that automation can deliver value, and then you can go up the sort of value chain, if you like, of doing things yourself. So we try to do that with any client. What's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the toolkit that's required? And do you need to do it yourself, or would you like to hire the tool from us effectively? With many of the tools, we have a master license agreement where we can do this, have child accounts under us, and allows the client to get in at a lower price point and get results quickly, which is, I think, the name of the game. It should be the name of the game for any automation, is to get momentum and get results. Okay, we'll move on. So the tip number 3 in this little series was develop an automation mindset. And I love this quote from Albert Einstein. The world we have created is a product of our thinking. It cannot be changed without changing our thinking. So we need to not just go and mimic keystrokes and mouse clicks. We need to process map and potentially re-engineer or just improve the process before we go and jump to automation. When we jump to automation, we need to not just have one tool and think, oh, okay, well, you're going to use an Excel spreadsheet to do some formulas, or we're going to use robotics to build out some logic. We think within that process, there's a data extraction process, there's a data validation step, then there's a data entry step. Which tool, APIs or RPA or workflow or data wrangling, which tool is the right tool kit to use here to deliver a robust and reliable solution is what we strongly encourage. Some of the examples that can be unlocked in a finance context are on the screen here. Obviously, we could talk to many of these, but we don't have time right now. I'd be very happy, obviously, to talk to anybody offline. But a range of things that you probably, again, won't normally see. Impact of accounting standards, statutory reporting, monthly performance, business performance, cost allocations for large companies are a huge issue, that they have big Excel spreadsheets or SQL databases doing this stuff, and people often don't know how it all works, and automation can definitely help in a number of areas there that we've already solved. So I'll throw that up because we will need to keep moving, and can come back to this maybe at question time. Oh, look, and there's a range of, lots of things that have been solved already. And I guess that's one of my messages to you is this, customer readiness is the key. So if you know you've got some problems, one of the things, or what with problems in the sense of areas you want to solve, one of the things to do would be to talk to providers, again, like us, that have already solved some things and say, have you done this? Have you done that? Even if the person hasn't, it doesn't mean it's not possible. And so often we have solved data wrangling problems and data capture problems, etc. And we can, it's a 10% pivot for us compared to the 90% pivot in the client's mind about what the difference is. But take the time to ask the questions. What do you solve? This is our problem, and listen to how the person might be able to solve it, because so many things are same but different, and it's that same that gives you confidence that the provider has dealt with similar things before, if not the same thing. All right. I thought this slide, I threw it in at the end just before presenting today. I don't normally share it with everybody, but I thought this might be helpful to some. The approach to take, in our view, to get success from automation is to crawl, walk, and then run. So incubate your knowledge. What's the problem you're trying to solve? Understand do some process discovery. What's the best fit tools for the different problems? Work out something, 1, 2, or 3 things, and go and do some proof of value. Once you've got that knowledge under your belt, you also understand your people readiness status a little bit as well, because you start understanding what's possible and what's needed. And then you can start cultivating and then transforming your automation journey. And this is what we take nearly all our clients through. It has been a great strategic and structured approach for clients. Now, I'm conscious of time at all. I know we started about 5 minutes late. Are you happy for me to go for another 3 or 4 minutes?
Yeah, sure. Please take it.
Thank you. All right, we'll jump through some examples here for everybody. So this is going to touch on understanding the problem, a process map, and identifying the current cost of reporting, which is always interesting to when people take the time to stop and think, well, how much is it really costing us to do that report every month or month end? So here was a number of things that we identified through an automation readiness review for a client. One of the things here was a team productivity and capacity report. The data came from 12 different spreadsheets. It had to be combined, validated, some testing done on it, scenario testing, and adjustments made. Now, this is what the report used to look like, an Excel spreadsheet, some different sheets here, and it was saying, well, this is how much work is happening in this accounting firm. This is the amount of money they were expecting to make this month, and so how they're traveling. Okay, a fairly common thing in an accounting firm where they measure everything. You can imagine this is a weekly approach to measuring their productivity and utilization. And here's some of the other sheets in the Excel file. Now, I'm not allowed to show you the process map for that process, but I'm showing you a different process map here. But in short, we process map that process. You know, where's the source data coming from? What what has to happen in the process? You validate the data, you map the data, then you create outputs. This is, as I said, a different process to show you some boxes and arrows. But this process mapping process that we have, it does boxes and arrows, and then for each of the boxes, we write down the different it's about what has to happen, where the data comes from, what's the Excel file, what's the system, etc. And you find then by doing process discovery, not just in a workshop sense, but in a including process mapping as your documentation method, with one of these tools that we use, we get some great residual benefits because you have an ongoing and live process map now. You can do a current state versus future state process map where maybe these couple of boxes can move from this swim lane into another swim lane, and you can look at, well, what does that mean for the business, and is that possible? Will that help the process? So process mapping is very helpful to understand the problem you're trying to solve. The next thing was, how much is that process costing? And it was interesting to put this to the client that it was actually costing them $40,000 a year to do their weekly report because this is how long it was taking. And then after the automation, the process, this is the automation tool here, and it was showing it normally ran in about 20 to 40 seconds, and then there was one run that took 2 minutes, just because of the data, etc., that had to be analyzed. But when you look at that, the amount of time saved is this. You know, it's basically nothing in terms of how much time it's taking to produce compared to it used to take 4 hours times by 4 people. 4 people because there was 4 different divisions all doing the same sort of report. So this is a return on investment, and the payback period, it was substantial for what would have been seen as a little bit of a complex Excel spreadsheet. It's got 12 different data sets. It has to be combined, validated. Oh, is that really worth it? It only takes half a day, a week. But when you added it all up, it was a big cost. And when you actually automated it, it became zero time, basically. So on-demand reporting as opposed to having to do 4 hours every Monday morning. And the other thing I guess I want to draw out here is in a slide that I showed earlier, these were all data wrangling type of problems to solve. Valid data, validation, reconciliation, and workflow. So once we had automated that one process, other processes could be similarly automated in a similar way in the same tool. So the toolkit starts paying off in its value. And in this list of 10 items, this was another process down here that was automated using the same tool. Okay, moving on, data wrangling. This is for the finance people on the call. This should be useful for you. This is a weekly versus budget report. And the process looked like this: extracting data from different data sources, validating the data, combining it, analyzing, finding exceptions, then looking into the exceptions, then creating a draft report and then a final report. So that's a typical month-end process in an accounting function or in a finance function. And what I'm trying to show you here is it's a weekly actual versus budget report process, but when you break it into its activity groups of data sources, data management, data analytics, and then within each activity group, the different tasks, extract data from these different systems, validate the data, combine the data, you start to see that it's a common pattern of steps that are happening. And I'll come back to this in a moment. You can also say, well, then what about cost center reporting? So another finance type of process that happens every month. Generally, you'll find that maybe the systems of record change, but the steps within the process are similar. And therefore, if you've automated one thing, if you've automated this one, the people that went on that journey understood how to do it. They are now enabled to think, oh, look, if we can automate this, we can automate that. And they start building up their own pipeline of what's possible. They might even start designing the spreadsheets and the mapping files and the output files. They don't necessarily build the automation from day one. We think citizen developers should happen over time with the right skills, the right people to minimize the risk of error and reduce the governance need at the center of excellence level, although it's obviously always needed. But we ease into it. But we don't have to stop people thinking. I just automated weekly, monthly, week versus actual report. Now I can automate Center of Excellence reporting. No, it's cost center reporting, I should say. So yeah, that was the last quick example I wanted to show you. I'm sorry I have had to move fairly quickly here and rather make some other points, but my biggest message to those on the call is automation does save time. How it can be used better is up to management to solve. And the key would be unlocking an automation mindset. While everybody's always too busy, if we can solve something, do some show and tell, show what's possible, and get the people in the business thinking about what's possible and having their own automation pipeline, maybe doing their own process mapping, we then start the momentum towards an automation journey using a toolkit approach, as I said earlier. And then you won't be stuck in this sort of diagram. You'll be doing a lot more value-added work in the finance function. So thank you. Thanks for the extra time, Atul. And I hope that session was insightful and helpful to the audience.
Yeah, sure. It was a valuable session. So now we are in the QA session. We can quickly take some questions. So please unmute yourself, go ahead with the query. And as a token of thanks, this is the certificate of honor for the Michael. Michael will share with you on email. So this is the certificate of honor which we are giving for the valuable insight and time to Michael.
Thank you, Atul. Appreciate that. And I'm not sure if Tim was trying to ask a question there, but if you had any questions, Tim, feel free to reach out to me offline and be happy to talk.
Yes. So thank you, Michael, from Tim. There's a message from Tim.
Okay.
Okay, so I believe there's
Have a
no
great day.
query. Yeah, so there is no query. So with this, we'll take a break, short break, and again we'll resume at 12 p.m. as per Melbourne time. So till then, we can take break. But before going to break, definitely I would like to thank all our speakers for engaging sessions. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, Sian, and thank you, Michael, for engaging the session. Thank you.